You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guest about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. We are in the presence of CX wisdom. I am so excited to talk with Diane Magers today. I've had the pleasure of seeing Diane talk at many events, and each time I have come back with a specific item, or really a suite of items, I can apply immediately to my customer experience approach. Companies worldwide look to Diane for leadership for their customer engagement strategy, design, development, and execution. I know that my ability to tie specific financial results to customer experience initiatives comes directly from what I've learned from Diane. She is an absolute leader in the CX space. Diane, welcome to CX Passport.
Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure to be here, Rick. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that's the takeaway because that's my mantra. I want people to learn and have a laundry list of things they can go back and actually do. So we're going to talk about the how more than just the what today.
Excellent. Yeah, and I am definitely example A of taking nuggets away from any time I've heard you talk. So I know here in the CX world, we talk about how employee experience is vital to customer experience. It's a known mantra, right? But yet too many companies still don't recognize or leverage this. Why do you think that is?
I believe that they're not really defining it the way that we think they should. So I'll give you an example of that. So when I say the term employee experience, a lot of people think, oh, that's about the survey we do for them, or that's the bagels and perks that we give to employees. And, it's, I call it kind of beyond the bagels. Those are all great things and they're important. But what we're talking about really is employee experience as exactly what we do from a customer experience standpoint. We should be putting that lens toward employees. In other words, you should have ongoing listening and conversations with them. We should be looking for the pain points of what's difficult about them getting their job done. How are we understanding their emotional connection to the brand? Everything that we do, it's just turning that lens on the employee. And then employee engagement is actually the outcome of that. So if we want employees to be engaged, how are we going to understand what that means and what does it look like? So I often kind of separate it into, are you conducting employee experience opportunities to have them put discretionary effort against the, like be nicer to customers and do these things for customers? Or are you truly focused on their experience as a customer of the brand themselves? So I just ask people to kind of separate those two things out and really think about it in a little bit different way.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of separating out experience and engagement. It's almost one leads to the other. They certainly interrelate to each other. I definitely can see what you're saying there. I'm curious, have you seen some interesting examples of companies getting that right?
Yes, I can talk about one organization, a medical device company, who, when we worked with the call center team, one of the things that they were very frustrated with were, we're taking all these calls and we're feeling we're not really giving customers what they need. And so through several workshops and through engaging them in focus groups and looking at the data and having them come in and do insight generation from the data, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. We were able to identify where they could contribute to ideas and actually become part of working teams with, whether it was the digital team or IT or marketing, to work with them to solve the original problem that was driving the call in the first place. So that they felt like, one, they were in control, two, they had an impact and they weren't just kind of picking up the pieces from these broken experiences. And their ability to contribute and be heard and be valued drove retention rates. It drove referral rates. So Glassdoor, they were out there talking about how great it was to work, that they felt, valued. The reviews went up, their productivity went up. So all the measurements that came from just allowing them to be a part of the solution and what that did for the organization from a financial standpoint. So it was it was amazing to hear their stories. We went back a year later and we're talking about the next phase of what we were going to do. And many of them had moved on in the company because they discovered that they were trusted and valued. And so
Yeah.
they were seeking out, additional pieces, but the people coming in said it was one of the reasons they selected the organization, was that they had heard about how much they were using, but even their care center agents as ways to understand the experience and how they treated them.
What's so interesting in what you're saying there is it, and I realize there was a ton of work that went into what you're saying, right? I don't want to say that it was simple, but what you're describing, these aren't esoteric and really deeply complex concepts.
No.
To involve the people who are the closest to your customer, your frontline individuals in the solutions, not just extract as much value out of them as possible and chew them up, but rather make them a part of the solution.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't a company do that? What are some of the, when you've talked with companies that are resistant to that, or where you've seen that kind of resistance? Because it sounds so simple and so right. Why wouldn't someone do that?
Uh, I don't think they have it in their mind. Like it's they almost what I feel is happening now, and we can talk about this psychologically, but I feel like because organizations are kind of over rotating on technology and data and digital, that they're really forgetting the human being behind it. So
Mm,
you're right. This wasn't a program that really had anything to do with digital other than us, or technology, other than us looking at the data and using it. It was completely human driven. And one of the things that I think they realized, the eye opener was, we need to take care of our people and we need to understand what's happening, because they're the ones who are really driving the business results for us and taking care of our customers.
oh,
And so
that's
this
good.
shift, yeah, the shift back to humanness, I think for many organizations right now, those things that can be done are fairly simple. Like I didn't say it was simple to do it. We had to fight for time, because these are paid employees by the
Sure.
hour, and all the things that go along with it. But once we kind of got that buy-in, you're right. It didn't take much to do that. It's much like us as human beings. Like the small things really make huge difference.
Boy, I love that. And I think here, I already have what we're only a few minutes in, and I have my first nugget that I'm taking away from here. And I love that phrase, shift back to humanness. I feel like I may just sit and steep in that for a little bit and let that kind of wash over me, because I really like that. You did talk about, too, you mentioned financial results in there.
Yeah.
And I definitely think of you as a champion of helping companies tie customer experience to ROI. Absolutely proving that there are financial results with creating great CX. But let's extend that to the employee experience, as you alluded to earlier. Tell me more about your approach to ROI and employee experience.
What I think we need to uncouple is the fact that many people attach employee or customer or partner, supplier, or whatever person you want to talk about, experience to a metric. Okay, so a metric is an outcome of something like net promoter or effort score or trust index, whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
you want to do. And what I ask organizations that I work with is to think about the measures, right? So how many people stay longer, like we talked about with the medical device company?
Yeah.
What's the tenure? What's the training approach? What does turnover cost you? Think about that from a different perspective of how are you going to know that this actually worked? And they say, well, it's human beings. They're being engaged and involved. Well, yes, but how many people were part of that? How did you upskill those folks? Those folks learned a lot just by participating. So there's tangible and intangible things, but if you look at those measures, you're able to say, oh my gosh, we're able to reduce our cost of acquisition for new talent. We're able to see better productivity. We're less turnover that longer term. So
Mm.
when I think about experience, I think people just don't have the right lens on how they're looking at it to truly measure that, because the metrics tell us what they think about it, like how satisfied they are about their job,
Right.
but it doesn't tell us the why. And so the measures and the feedback and the conversations we need to have with employees
Mm-hmm.
are the why. And so once we figure that out, we're able to bring that in as part of what do we need to be doing differently.
Yeah, that it's that second layer,
Yes.
is what I'm hearing there is,
Yes.
and I can see that. I can see kind of that natural inclination to go after that first layer, but
Yeah.
helping a company understand, go one level further, and that gets you to where you're going to see, and not just see, but understand what that return on investment might look like.
Yeah, so think about this in your head. If you think about the model, if you have something like a Net Promoter or CSAT, and I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying they're
Sure.
just a part of the story. Those things correlate to revenue or cost, right? If you have a higher Net Promoter score, everybody nods their head that yes, there's a higher revenue, and they can correlate. There's the calculations you can do to get there. But what's missing is when you think about the measures behind that of how long did they stay, what was our hiring time frame, how much did we spend in training? Those are measures, and those can be quantified much easier.
Hmm.
And in addition to the twins, I call it, of telling that metric story, talking about the measurement story, and defining that to the actual business value. Everything eventually boils down to three things. It's cost, revenue, well, and profitability, if you want to talk about
You're
profitability,
right.
and then the goodwill on the bottom line. Like
Hmm.
I always say to people, don't forget to take credit for the intangibles, because that's why a goodwill exists on the balance sheet. Right? That's what all that is your
Right.
brand equity. So you have to kind of highlight that too. The fact that your organization is more collaborative is a critical important thing in this day and age. Why wouldn't you have that as a target goal?
Right.
You know, and that's an intangible, but really has a huge impact.
Well, and it does, and I think it has both that internal effect, right? So if you're more collaborative, you're going to be more creative, you're going to be designing products or whatever your company's uh, product or objective is, that will be easier, cheaper, faster, better. But then there's also that just, I'll just say it kind of silly, almost just those good vibes, right? So a lot of
Exactly.
us know
Exactly.
certain brands that are highly regarded as being great at customer experience because they provide great employee experience, and those sorts of things give them that halo effect. I think of actually one of them. You and I are both here in the North Texas area, and it's home to Southwest Airlines, and they are well known for certainly historically some quirky and fun in cabin experience, and I've always had that kind of
Yeah,
delight from a customer experience. But they're also sort of legendary in their approach to employee experience and culture. What have
they
you
are.
observed there?
They are. Well, I know that Heather she's their director of innovation. And one of the things that we were having a really fun conversation around is, how she really immerses herself in living that life of the traveler. And understand, like she said, I spend so much time in the airport. She said, I'll just go and sit at the airport for 3 or 4 hours and just watch people. I'm like, what? I want that job. Like I want to get paid to watch and think about how to make a difference. And so what she talks a lot about is how they can actually kind of brainstorm on what that does for an employee. So her whole approach with innovation and with many companies, and you can think about it, here's another exercise that you can go do, is she says we spend a lot of time really thinking about and brainstorming on what are the things that we're really going to learn as a result of doing something like this. So an example of that, another company, not Southwest, but similar to what Heather does, is we spend a lot of time really thinking about when we think about an employee coming and being a part of a journey mapping session, let's just say, and or a project, we brainstorm around what are the benefits that person may get out of this participation. One, because we need to go sell it to their leader.
Hmm.
What's in it
Right.
for my person if I give you their time? And so we talk about things like expanding their ability to become a technologist, or at AT&T it was workplace 2020. This is back years ago in 2013, I think. Really thinking about what skills that person is going to develop, that they learn more about the organization and they become more generalists.
Hmm.
So in this day and age, we want people to understand more about each part of the business, not just be in their silo.
Right.
So they're building those skills. They're learning the skills of design thinking when they come to be a part of the project. Highly sought after, brings innovation, makes it more. So all of these things that we talk about were purposeful and intentional about saying what are the benefits to the organization of engaging these employees, being a part of these, rather than just saying we're going to get a cross-functional team together.
Yeah.
Okay, like that.
Yeah.
What am I going to get
So
for that? Right? Yeah, because
right.
if you're a leader, so anytime I've been a leader, I'm always thinking about, oh, you want one of my people to be a part of that, or we're doing this activity. And I naturally go to, how is that going to really better things? And so if I'm able to answer that question as a CX leader about how I need people to come on, I gotta tell the business case story,
Yeah.
intangible and intangibles for their people. So that's one approach to helping yourself I would say bring engagement along,
Yeah.
but also the impact of what you're doing.
I do like that. You certainly have a theme that is woven through this entire conversation. That is, go that next level. So if on the surface, all right, cross collaborative team, but then why? So asking the
Yeah.
why, thinking that next level. What is that metric? What is the actual outcome? What is that next level? Going back to thinking about the Southwest example of Heather sitting there in the airport, and I'm kind of like that. That I would love to just sit and people watch in an airport.
No, I know.
It perhaps is something I need therapy for, but I do enjoy actually being in airports and that. But what I like about that is you've described someone who is trying to live the life of the customer by living in the shoes of the customer. Have you seen that be particularly impactful in other areas, getting into really understanding what a customer is experiencing so that a company can then derive how to create the best CX?
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm going to take it. Okay, so one step further.
Of
That's always
course.
what
There's the
people.
theme
That's
of this
how
conversation.
That's how they describe me. At one step further. So I would say, um, for Heather, for example, most of that time, even when she's sitting there, she is actually also engaging with the employees and talking about the things that stand in their way from doing whatever they want to do. Going down and talking to baggage handlers, talking to the flight attendants while the flight's going on and kind of watching their behavior and then following up afterwards, right? One, extend that to the employees. So here's an example of one of the things that just about got me fired at one organization, but that's me, right? It's pushing the envelope.
Excellent.
We the company had a lot of issues, and one of the things that the executives were just kind of in denial. We were showing them all this information about what customers were going through, and they were rationalizing it away, like that's a
Right.
one-off. That doesn't happen very often. So we decided that we were going to have them mystery shop. And so we wrote up scripts and we set up dummy accounts for them. And we asked them to go into the retail store, to call the care center, to go online and try to do these things, which were very common things, are use cases,
Right.
I guess, if you would say. And the executives coming back were so fired up about what experience they'd gone through and
Right.
couldn't deny what they felt like going through it and then what impact it was having on the organization. So when we then said, well, because of those experiences, we're seeing this defection, we're seeing these things, then they're like, oh, now I connect employee customer. But what was ironic about that is when the second phase of that was having them go in and actually do the work. So go into the care center and not take calls, but
Right.
listen to calls. Go in the retail store and watch, observe, go in and really see what's happening, not just go in and try to experience it, but watch employees and where they struggle. So that empathy that they developed, not only for the customer, but also for the employee. So
Yeah.
we, again, folding that map out, as I call it, is take that immersion one step further and make it about what the employee is experiencing and what they're able to do or not able to do as a result of the environment that you've created.
Little change of pace here. Want to stop down, grab a bite to eat, get a beverage here in the first class lounge. And I want to ask you, what is a dream travel location from your past?
Well, that would have to be a toss up between New Zealand
Ooh.
um, and Norway.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
New Zealand, if you close your eyes and think about the pictures from a lot of movies that you've seen, Lord of the Rings was filmed there. It is such a vast difference in ecosystems. My husband says, as a biologist, from sitting on the beach to walking up to the top of a mountain where there's snow. New Zealand has everything. And I spent a day, very rarely do I take a day off, but when I spent a day um, with a backpack going across New Zealand from vineyard to vineyard, doing wine tasting all day. So I would have a
Very
taste at a
nice.
vineyard, have a little something to eat. I'd hike to the next one, which was a couple miles away. Have a taste there. Got to meet just wonderful, wonderful people, and just spent the day kind of just soaking all that in.
Oh my gosh. And it's so after this episode, I'm going to be asking, hey, can you send me the link for that hike so I can learn a little bit more about that? That sounds like one that I would be particularly interesting to me. So
It's
thank you for those
awesome.
wonderful experiences, but now a dream travel location you've not been to yet.
My husband and I, who we've known each other since kindergarten, and we've been
Oh,
married for 30, almost 40 years now. Um, we had planned a trip to Italy for our anniversary because neither one of us had ever been there.
hmm.
So we're going to go to Paris and then Italy and spend time in wine country. You seeing a theme here?
Yeah.
Um,
So next level and wine will be the title of the episode.
yeah. Uh, and of course, we had to cancel that
Yeah.
because of COVID. So that's still on my bucket list.
Hoping you get there soon. We're certainly hoping for that. So, what is a favorite thing to eat?
Oh, sushi,
All
hands down,
right.
and pasta. I guess really
Let's not
healthy.
combine those, but yes,
Oh
too
yeah,
delightful.
yeah, very much
What
so.
is a thing your parents forced you to eat but you hated as a kid?
Nothing.
Okay, I like that.
There is. I love Brussels sprouts. I love okra. Like I don't care. You can name it. Name a food. There is nothing I really won't eat. Ask any of my friends. They'll tell you. It's like she eats everything and a lot of
That's
it.
that's fantastic. Kudos to you. What I'm finding funny is Brussels sprouts has now come up in multiple episodes. You're the first to say that you liked them, but it is
I
interesting to
love them.
hear how
I
they're
love
moving
them.
forward.
I love them. Yeah.
What is one travel item you will not leave home without?
Warm socks.
Diane, I want to go back to the airline industry. And as we went through 2020 and the various approaches to CX during the pandemic, all of them trumpeted their cleaning approach. Some went further and dramatically reduced the passengers in the plane, such as by blocking middle seats or reducing capacity. How do you see these COVID reactions to CX, either specifically the airlines or just travel and hospitality in general, impacting the customer's choice and thus their spend going forward?
Well, I don't know that the criteria, I mean, the criteria has probably changed, but the tactical functional piece of, are you keeping things clean? Are you aware?
Hmm.
Are all important. I don't think anybody's going to say that isn't number one as we go back, is the hotel clean? What I think they probably need to be thinking more about is what I call these subconscious indicators of what you're doing to invite people. So many people now that are traveling, they're traveling and having experiences, but part of traveling is meeting people, like I talked about,
Yeah.
meeting people and getting to experience the culture in that way. And those who are really thinking about, what are truly the human needs that I can bring into this rather than, hey, it's a great buffet, it's a clean room. Those things are going to become table stakes.
Hmm.
And they're really going to have to get creative because as the industry, I hope, rebounds dramatically
Right.
and actually goes kind of overboard, which would be wonderful, is, what's going to make the difference? If that's just the basics for what people are going to expect, yes, they'll make decisions there, but what else? So I'll give you an example of one small boutique hotel in Denver who is making the what I would call the experiences. So they have a downtown tour of old downtown. You can go tour the baseball. They've redone Union Station down there, so you can have somebody who's lived in Denver a long time take you on a tour to
Oh,
all the
nice.
art. So they're making that a part of just offering it to people who are coming to the hotel. So they're looking for ways to engage people coming with the hotel, but also what they're looking for to learn more about the city and come back, right?
I do. I like that. And it actually reminds me of a trip that my family took, well, actually to Italy, but it was clearly, obviously, pre COVID. And one of the things that we really enjoyed was doing in Venice, we did a walking tour. And in Florence, we did a cycling tour. And it was exactly what you're describing. You've got this really walking you through the things that go, well, let's stay with the theme, one level deeper than what you might get on the surface as a regular tourist just walking around and observing on your own. And those things are kind of fun. And I think you're right that a lot of this will be the cleaning and everything else will be the table stakes, but it's
Yeah.
going to be how are you kind of creating that deeper connection and again going that next level further. It makes me want to go back to something that we talked about earlier, and that was going back to employee experience. And we may kind of find ourselves finishing out here with employee experience. You
Yeah.
know, we were talking about Southwest, we were talking about other cultures. Well, a lot of that is built inside the company, but a lot of it is also you've got to continue this influx of talent that feeds that type of culture and feeds that sort of thing. How have you seen companies really focused on bringing that inbound talent to continue to amplify that great employee experience, continue to be a part of that great culture, that be it employee experience or customer experience?
I read somewhere the other day that about 26% of people in post-COVID are going to be looking for a new job.
Wow, one
And
fourth.
yeah, and I don't think that means they're looking for a job. I have to go back and find it, and I'm happy to go search for that document. But what I interpreted it, the way that I read it, was that 26% of people who currently have a job are going to be looking for a job. And the reason they're stating is because they have either gone through heck as they have tried to motivate themselves. So many changes to business models, changes to org structures, changes to their roles, that that pressure has been so much, and they've learned more about how their company operates in a moment of crisis, which, as we know, shows a lot of warts sometimes,
Oh
but
yeah.
also shows a lot of times what the company's really made of.
Hmm.
And I think people have come to realization of, one, life's too short to do something you don't want to do. We've all
Hmm.
been very introspective. But two, am I in the right place? Am I in a place where I feel like my talents are valued?
Right.
So I'll give you an example of that. I had I call this my floating in the pool moment. I had a leader who called me in, and it's not the first time I've heard this, called me in and said, you know what, Diane, you can't stay in your lane. You're always thinking about this big picture. You get your projects done, but you're always trying to bring in these other things and expanding scope. And you're working with different people, and need you to just kind of focus on things. I'm like, well, I felt horrible. It was like I gotten the job done, but obviously I didn't do it the way that he was asking. And so I was a little bruised,
Yeah.
felt, that's not really good feedback. So I'll go think about that. Let me introspect a little bit and figure out what's going on there. And what I began to realize is, he was probably right in some ways, but in some ways I was like, you know what that tells me? There's a company out there who really wants somebody to have this bigger picture and
Yeah.
connect the dots. And that's what I love to do, and that's what I'm good at. So I'm in the wrong place. I tendered my resignation the next week.
Wow.
Um, I was in the wrong place. I wasn't valued. So I think people are having those floating in the pool moments of being introspective about the work that they're doing, how their company brings them along, how they're treated, and what they really want from an organization. And so this call to action for organizations, if you're a leader, is to define the culture that you're creating and
Yeah.
how you want people to feel, and the type of people. To your question about talent, that was full circle. Question about talent is, what is the talent you're looking for, and the type of person that you want in that role, not just the skill sets, but what's that personality like, what values are you looking for, and how do you want those people to feel being part of your team.
Wow. I like that, and I'm glad you had that floating in the pool moment, because I actually, hearing the story, I kind of gasped a little bit thinking about someone saying you're thinking too much big picture. Well,
Yeah.
isn't that what we want people to do, and connect the dots? So how wise of you to go find that opportunity. So, man, Diane, this has been spectacular. I've really enjoyed talking with you. The again, kind of nuggets that I think of walking out of here. Let's take that example right there. That is a direct example of how a company could tie employee experience to an ROI, because that company that you left now has to go find someone new, has to replace the talent that you brought in there. And so I loved our discussion around tying employee experience to ROI. I certainly liked hearing about the Southwest example of getting out there and going to that next level. And absolutely right. The theme of this was going next level, understanding the metrics, but then what are the outcomes and what does that actually tie in? And yes, Another specific nugget that I take away is I'm going to go to New Zealand and I'm going to put a backpack on and I'm going to taste wine and hike and just thrive in every moment of it. So, Diane, thank you for all of those wonderful things. Thank you for the conversation today. I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you being a guest on CX Passport today.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. It's awesome for you to be doing this and getting these nuggets and sharing them. So thank you, and everybody have a wonderful day. And here's to the next phase of us growth, personal growth and wealth.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. Make sure to visit our website, cxpassport.com, where you can hit subscribe so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, you can check out the rest of the EX for CX website. If you're looking to get real about customer experience, EX for CX is available to help you increase revenue by starting to listen to your customers and create great experiences for every customer every time. Thanks for listening to CX Passport, and be sure to tune in for our next episode. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.